and open up the room.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. We're going to give people just about another 30 seconds to a minute to join in, and then we'll go ahead and get started.
All right. As folks start to file in, feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. Thank you all for joining us today. Hello and welcome to part 2 of Finding Commonalities and Solutions with Decision Makers. I'm Joshua Harris. I'm joining you today from Baltimore, Maryland, which sits on the land of the Piscataway and Susquehannock people. I am the Senior Manager of Marketing and Communications for Voices for Healthy Kids, initiative of the American Heart Association, which works to advance equitable policies that make the places where babies, toddlers, kids, and families live, learn, and play healthier. Today, we'll focus on advancing local decision-making and limiting preemption policies that improve health and well-being. Today's workshop builds on part 1, which you experienced through the video modules. We're recording these workshops so people who aren't able to attend can watch later. We won't record the breakout sessions though, since that's where we hope the conversations can be most candid and open for discussion. And if you're watching this recording, we encourage you to use the breakout as pause to do activities on your own. But before we continue, I'd like to allow a moment for my colleagues to introduce themselves.
Thanks, Joshua. Hi, everyone. I'm Jennifer Messenger with Metropolitan Group. We're a social change firm working with Voices for Healthy Kids on messaging and movement building. I'm joining you today from Portland, Oregon, which rests on unceded traditional village sites of many indigenous peoples who made their homes along the Columbia River, including the Clackamas and Molalla tribes. One of our colleagues who's not here today, but you'll meet her later on video, is Anasuya Starbear. She's a non-polarizing communication specialist and has been a big part in developing this work. If you watched Module 7, you met her there, and she'll be with us virtually a bit later.
And hello, I'm Serene Arena. I'm also with Metropolitan Group. I'm based in Madison, Wisconsin, which occupies ancestral Ho-Chunk land, a place their nation has called Dejop, meaning 4 lakes, since time immemorial. Thanks for being with us.
And I'm Ali Rahimi, National Grassroots Manager Digital for Voices for Healthy Kids. I'm joining today from Carrollton, Texas, which is a suburb in Dallas and part of a greater area of land that was once home to the Wichita people. So diving into our agenda for today, we'll begin with a brief recap and discussion of content from the modules and online guide. Then we'll spend most of our time together workshopping the messages and tools so that you feel more ready to use them in your work. If you've been using your workbook for notes and questions as you watch the modules, go ahead and grab that. And if you haven't started the workbook yet, please download it now so you have it for the workshops. And the link should be in the chat. You'll also see a link to the guide if you'd like to have that handy as well.
The guide and this training are grounded in the intent to build bridges and working relationships as you work to advance policies and long-term conversation and change. We use a non-polarizing communication approach, which prioritizes listening and understanding multiple viewpoints and asks all of us to try to release assumptions. We all, including all of us on this call, come from an array of backgrounds and beliefs and lived experiences. And we hope to keep an often open and curious space for all of those. You may hear us catching ourselves if we slip into oppositional language or barrier language rather than bridging language. We may gently offer feedback to each other or even to you if we hear the group conversation going that way. We invite you to listen and lean in and share what you're hearing too.
You've had some time with the video modules. There are about 9 videos totaling about an hour and a half on the guide. And if we can go to the next slide. We can show the workbook in case you haven't downloaded that. We dropped chat in a little minute ago, but today we're going to take some time to provide space and questions for discussing the content from the modules and that guide. And in reality, we understand time and scheduling, and we know that you may not have gotten all the way through the work or remember everything about the content. So we'll start with a quick recap, which will either be a refresher or might be new information if you haven't had the time. And then we'll pause for questions and discussions before we move into workshopping the non-polarizing communication techniques. And just know in all of this that you can always revisit the modules as you need to, and the guide will always be available.
Thank you so much, Serene. We'll start with the archetypes. Let's do a bit of a recap. This training and guide aim to help you advance effective conversations with decision makers, especially in politically conservative states or jurisdictions. We started with the conservative focus because it's where advocates were finding the most opposition to policy change. Eventually, we hope to expand the research to strengthen conversations with all decision makers, no matter where they lie on the political spectrum. Our first goal was to more deeply understand this group of decision makers, and especially the values and needs that inform their policy work, because there is no one type of conservative decision maker. We developed and built out 4 archetypes, which are typical examples of a person or group. Those archetypes have enabled us to explore more specific ways of approaching how to talk about policies with people representative of those archetypes. We developed the archetypes using existing research input from people holding both conservative and progressive viewpoints, discussions with advocates working on health and well-being related policies in conservative states, and interviews with elected officials. The archetypes we defined, as you'll see on the screen, are church and country, economic influence, legacy Republican, and populist aligned.
And before I share details, I want to reinforce our commitment, and that's to do this work without stereotypes or judgment. Instead, we focus on understanding feelings, needs, and core values within each archetype to help you advance productive dialogue. So there are some quick definitions. The definition of an archetype is a very typical example of a certain person or thing, whereas the definition of a stereotype is a widely held but fixed and oversimplified image or idea of a particular type of person or thing. So whereas stereotypes can reduce people to a simplistic idea in order to shut down curiosity and openness, archetypes give us examples of people who may hold similar views and values, and that can help increase our own understanding. So you can use the archetypes as part of your analysis of decision makers, and then that can help you and your coalition determine who you'll meet with, who the right people are to attend meetings, and what information you want to share. And in all of that, I want to add that you'll want to bring your own homework and specifics to that conversation.
All right, let me briefly go through the archetypes. Thank you for that background. I know some of you are probably thinking, we don't want to stereotype people, and so it's very helpful to understand the difference between an archetype and a stereotype. But we'll start with defining and looking at church and country. They are often loyal to their chosen leaders. They are deeply influenced by a conservative interpretation of Christian values and a moral approach. They are called by their faith to help others, to be protector of constituents and community. And this is why you may see examples of them doing community service initiatives, whether they be food drives or clothing drives, or connecting people to healthcare and other resources. They often believe that churches and communities already have sufficient resources to help the people that are most in need. They take pride in a position that has been earned. And so if there's an expectation that others should work hard for what they desire in life, at the same time, there's a sympathy for those in poverty, especially in rural areas. Their values include faith, authority, tradition, control, care, and service. Moving on to the next one, economic influenced. This group prioritizes the economy and business strength and favors limited government. They are passionate about discussing the details of policy, especially the data and numbers supporting it, in order to fully understand cost, benefits, and return on investment. This group favors limited government, believing that the public sector alone is inefficient and ineffective for solving problems. Their values include freedom, individual choice, and control. They're often motivated to help people become self-sufficient. For them, it can be helpful to show how proposed solutions can save or reduce government spending. The next archetype is the legacy Republican. These decision makers are driven by traditional values of hard work and the American dream, represent the legacy Republican archetype. They value debate and are interested in other points of view. They're open to stepping outside of party lines. They're passionate about details and are motivated about solving problems and helping people. Their values include diligence, care, service, leadership, and integrity. The next archetype and final one is populist aligned. These decision makers value individuals making efforts to advance themselves without outside help or government spending. They're led by constitutional ideals and are motivated by being a champion for people's rights. They value individual efforts. There is resentment towards people who are not perceived to have rightfully earned their benefits. This group believes society does not need to make things fair for everyone. Their values often include loyalty to America, diligence, freedom, and directness.
And of course, even with this more detailed look at conservative decision makers, no individual fits neatly into one archetype or the other. So the guide also includes insights that hold true across the archetypes, including the strength of freedom as an overarching value, and the very strong conviction that people have an individual responsibility to take care of themselves. Within that is this idea of a good job solving a lot of problems. So keeping an eye on how policy you're advancing is going to connect back to economic development is going to be important. In our interviews, many decision makers share that they often feel judged and villainized by people with progressive viewpoints, and that progressive terminology felt alienating, really highlighting how different they are from the person they're speaking with. And with many of these decision makers, we also learned or confirmed that it can be difficult to have that direct conversation about structural racism, or at least to start a conversation there. And I want to acknowledge that this may not come as a surprise, and our teams are not letting up on that work. And saying this may cause harm to some of us. But building understanding and changing culture here is a longer-term effort, and we're building that incrementally through open listening and trust building. For those of you who are in settings where it's possible to advance that direct conversation, there's the racial equity in public policy resources there for you to help prepare for engagement that directly addresses structural racism and policy solutions. You see that here on the slide, and we're going to drop a link to the chat, drop a link in the chat as well. And with our Finding Commonalities guide that we're discussing today, there are what we call dials as part of that. And those are ways to get more specific within each archetype to really hone in about how you're talking. You can think of this as ways to turn up or down the characteristics within an archetype based on things like a person's age, where they live, their life experiences, and the other factors as well. And all of it is meant to support thinking through how we approach and talk with the other person constructively and effectively. And finally, the guide offers messaging on 2 topics that are fine-tuned to work with the archetypes. We started with prenatal-to-3 policies, and this new update of the guide, which is our focus here, looks at advocacy for local decision-making.
Next, we'll go into workshop part of this session, diving into the other important components of the guide, how to take a non-polarizing approach to advance more productive conversations, and holding true to your own values and hold off preemption where needed. But before we dive into that workshop part, we want to open the opportunity of the floor and invite your questions, observations, or any discussion around the archetypes that you may have. So we'll take a moment to do that. You can feel free to use the raise your hand tool or pop questions in the chat, or take yourself off of mute and ask your question directly. I see that Logan has a question.
Hey, everyone. Have you guys thought about naming some people into these categories? I mean, I guess I'm sure you probably have thought about it, but would it be helpful, and like maybe state legislators or federal legislators? Because I often I go back and forth who I think would be in them in my state and obviously the federal level too. Would you guys think about doing something like that?
I know that, and I'll give Jennifer and Serena an opportunity to chime in. I know that oftentimes when I've done this in person or had conversations, for the legacy Republicans specifically, I oftentimes reference John McCain. I think that if we do that, we'd have to use federal examples just because people are from different states and may not know state legislators, but just understanding kind of the way that some of those decision makers have made decisions. I think that's a great suggestion.
I think Logan, I love your question, and how I would answer it is, yes, I would encourage you to do that. I don't want to do that because I don't want to characterize people. This isn't a hard and fast definition. There's a lot of art to this. And so I view this less as, oh, this person is this and that person is that. And so therefore, here's the approach you use. But more like, okay, this person, where do they fit? Well, they're kind of church and country, but there's definitely like a populist aligned thing going on and they're young. So I'm hearing this. And that gives me a way to fine tune how I might approach that person versus putting anybody in a box. So when we developed this, we developed the archetypes and then we identified policymakers, and our team put people into the different archetypes in our brains because we needed to make sure we were talking to people who represented across the archetypes. So we've done a little bit of that, but that's about as far as we'd go. So I think for you, when you get into small groups, you might say like, okay, I'm thinking of Senator whoever, who's definitely economic influence. So that's who I'm going to have in mind when I'm thinking about this. But I think use it in your own work versus pulling it into the guide.
And Aylin just made a great point in the chat saying, and they may change or cross archetypes at any time. And so that really, you'll get to know that in the work that you're doing intimately on the ground as you get to know and do your background research on, and you get to know legislators up close in person. Do we have any other questions? All right, and also just remember, in case you have something and maybe you don't want to ask it now, you will be able to, or you can bring your questions and ideas to your technical assistance sessions or meetings with your coalitions. All right, Serene, off to the workshops.
Wonderful. Thanks, Joshua. As Jennifer noted a little earlier, the guide includes messages and strategies to advance local decision-making. That's the head part. From there, it diverts a little from a standard message training. It also includes information on using your thoughts and feelings, your heart and your gut, to guide the work and care for yourself while you're doing it. We're wired to use these three different types of perceptions altogether. And when we do, it activates an inner compass and keeps us aligned with our values and purpose. And when we don't activate that inner compass by checking in with those feelings and values and needs, we can sometimes start feeling stuck, frustrated, even depressed or hopeless. And so this approach comes from the practice of non-polarizing communication. And it can feel new or even strange a little at first, but people we've workshopped with are telling us it's really helpful and it resonates with the needs that they're having in the work that they do. So non-polarizing means that rather than falling into a them and us scenario, we're speaking and listening from a place of curiosity, because we want to understand where we can bridge our core values and those of another person's whose stance may seem very different from our own. I just want to say to remember, in finding alignment doesn't mean agreement. So the guide outlines several ways that you can practice staying open and curious, find that common ground without surrendering what you hold dear to yourself. And in Module 7, our colleague Anasuya Starbear, the non-polarizing communication specialist, she's worked with groups in conflict across the world, and she introduces this awareness shield. It shows the characteristics that keep you open to conversation and offer you self-care and self-protection. So I encourage you to watch or even revisit that module to learn how to build this shield. Anasuya also offers a supplemental module on the role of trauma in this work. And all of the content for the workshop is included in the online guide. It's in the section called Creating Shared Space for Productive Conversations. And even with the shield, and even with preparation, even with the guide, there may be conversations that you just need to skip or you need to walk away from. And we talk about that as well. But that said, the goal is to help you stay safe in the conversation as long as it's possible. So let's look at how you might use your insights about your own feelings that can help you prepare for that dialogue. We're going to dive into this a little bit more, and that's going to be in small group breakouts where we're going to explore and acknowledge the feelings that often arise when we're having conversations with decision makers. So we've created small groups. There's about 4 people in each, and you're going to work together at a couple points today. And the intention is to create safe space for you to collaborate, to share experiences and perspective, to experiment, and make mistakes and learn together. So you can see in the prompt for the breakout on the slide, and it's in the worksheet in your workbook, which is labeled Breakout 1. It's on page 12. That link will be in the chat, again, where you can find the workbook if you don't already have it open. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to introduce ourselves. And then we're going to reflect on this quote that comes from one of our interviews. So you'll read the quote to yourself, and you'll notice how you feel when you imagine someone saying this to you. And you'll want to refer to the feeling, needs, and values list on the website. You'll find that link in the chat as well, and it's in the workbook too. Again, this might feel new or unusual. Sometimes people say it's like therapy. It's a very effective way to be grounded in conversation. And through this process, I want to say all feelings are valid and okay. You may feel supported. You may feel anxious. I don't know where anyone in this group sits in terms of values, beliefs, and ideology. And I encourage all of us here not to make assumptions about colleagues on the call today. We need to all be in this together. The point isn't to get rid of your feelings. That's not what the workshop helps process. It's not to help you validate anyone else's feelings over your own. It's about finding your own psychological safety and finding common ground despite obstacles. And so no matter what your values or stance, you may feel challenged in policy discussions with people who oppose government intervention or who have different ideas about how we build our communities. The goal is to create conversation where everyone is supported, everyone is safe, and everyone can therefore be open with each other, because that's therefore how you can then advance your policy solutions. So in your group, you're going to discuss the feelings that come up for you when you read the quote. And if you get done and you need another quote to play with, you'll find a link at the bottom of your worksheet where there are some additional quotes from the interviews. Are there any questions? All right. We're going to have about 5 minutes in the groups, and then we'll come back and discuss.
Welcome back, everyone. I'm curious about what came up for you. Feel free to jump into the chat and share some of the feelings that came up in your group discussion as you worked on that quote. In my group, we talked about the tension between feeling empathy, working to feel empathy, and feeling frustration, confused or wary. What other feelings came up as you read that? I was asking the question in my group about how often you sit with something like this and name the feelings that are coming up for you. I know that you as advocates are working in real time and you hear something like that and you're immediately processing, okay, where do I go with that? And you may be processing, wow, how does this make me feel? Do I feel safe? Do I feel heard? Do I feel like I'm able to continue this conversation? Lots of stuff come up. Yeah, feeling hypocrisy, lack of accountability, not accepted or appreciated, apprehensive. And again, just remaining open to the wide range of people who are in this room, who we are and who we know. Any way that you feel about that quote is okay. The idea is to sit with it and think about it and think ahead of time about the kinds of things you might hear in a conversation and what feelings and needs that might raise for you. Yeah, Lynn, that's a really interesting point. Not immediately framing what the conversation will be like based on past experiences, really trying to stay open. I hear that frustration. Thank you for sharing those. So again, the intention of the guide is to support you in making space to acknowledge your feelings, take care of that, be ready for that, get the support you need so that you can stay in this. And to try to understand and find some shared humanity across values and ideals and differences of opinion. When we've done this training at other times, people have shared stories about, seeing a legislator at a town event or something, like someone they'd never thought they could connect with, and they end up in the buffet line or whatever together, and they bond over the fact that they both have a sibling going through something similar. And then from there on, the door is a little bit more open. They may not change the policy and agree with you instantly, but the ability to have a conversation is open because you've created that shared connection. So set up part 2 of the breakout. And just to remind you, these exercises are all detailed in the online guide. So I hope that you'll find this an interesting teaser for this work today and lean into that guide in preparation and conversations with your team and your coalition. Logan, I see your hand before I set up the second exercise.
Oh, there's just one. The quote did make me think of. We had an electric vehicle law in Philadelphia, and one person complained to one council member about it, and they changed the law. And it just makes me think, like, legislators hear from so few people on so many of these issues that, like, yeah, maybe it was like 1 or 2 people that reached out about it, like, and that's all they heard, so that they just think, hey, everyone's feeling this way. So I always, whenever I do public speaking, I always show people my phone and I'm like, hey, I have my legislators' numbers in my phone, and if there's an issue that I care about, I call them, because I might be the only person that calls them, and they talk about it in their office. So yeah, that's what I was thinking also, and I didn't say that in the group, but I should have.
I appreciate that, Logan. That's such a good point. And encouraging other people to do the same, because they hear from very few people and they usually hear from people who are mad. So making sure that they're hearing both sides of an issue, different perspectives. Logan, you were getting some thumbs up and some applause from the crowd on that. Okay, so let me take you to, and please feel free to keep jumping in like that with comments and stories and sharing. So here's where we'll go next. We'll go into the same breakouts. If you're in your workbook, I'm on page 13. So you have the same quote this time. Have somebody in the group read the quote out loud. But this time, as you listen, try to imagine what the person saying this would be feeling. So go back to that needs and values and feelings list. Use your own intuition. Think about, where are they coming from? What is this quote expressing that they need or value in this conversation? And then you'll work as a group to translate the quote into a non-polarizing version. So if this person had spoken from a place of needs and values instead of whatever came out, what might they have said instead? Now, if you watched module 7, you saw Anasuya do this magical translation where she took blaming language and turned that into some feeling words. She did it with a quote about life not being fair. So let me show you actually as an example of what you're about to do, a different example from Anasuya's work. So she took the quote, "Local control depends on the issue and levels of expertise. I wouldn't want my local government, even if it's a big city, making decisions on what drugs are appropriate for me to take. I want the State Department of Health doing that. On the other hand, I want them to make decisions about what water line goes where, doing traffic studies, things like that." So you could hear that as a pretty solid shutdown to local decision-making around health issues. But you could also try to listen deeper. And so the way Anasuya interpreted this was thinking about what she heard them saying, and then her response came from that place. Yes, you value the ability to decide what levels of expertise are needed in any given situation and having the freedom to make choices based on that. How do you see that coming into play with this issue we're talking about right now? So she's saying, I'm trying to hear you. I'm trying to see where you're coming from in terms of values and needs and feelings. And let's just linger there for a minute. And I'm going to keep listening to you while you help me understand more. Instead of what could be your reaction to be like, well, that's not who should make these decisions. The state, really sit, feel, listen, try to hear where they are. It doesn't mean we're asking you to agree, make friends, any of that stuff. We're asking you just to hear and try to find that deeper level of connection. So here again is the quote that you'll workshop. It's the same one you workshopped a minute ago, thinking about how it made you feel. Hold on to that. And now we're going to go back into groups, try to do a translation of this quote into needs and feelings words. So what would they have said if they spoke from a place of needs and feelings? And then think about a reply that you would bring to that. Any questions before we go try that out? And if you learned from the last group that you got to your group and you didn't have the quote and the instructions, you might want to take a screenshot because then you'll have it when you get there. Okay, again, we'll spend a little more than 5 minutes in the group and then come back. And if you get done and you want to workshop another quote, you can use the link on your workshop that will take you to additional quotes on the website. Welcome back. I'm curious, again, you can share in the chat if you'd like, how that felt once you really tried to get in the other person's chair, shoes, whatever you got into. How did that feel? What feelings came up for you as you thought about what needs and feelings were behind what they were saying? One of the things we talked about in our group was maybe a little bit of a guilty feeling, like that they were, trying to follow the party line, but not sure if that's what people wanted, or some defensive-ness, maybe coming from a place of not knowing and wanting to know. You could feel their irritation. Our group talked about that too, and the question I asked as a follow-up is, okay, so they feel irritated, but what need do they have that's not being met that's making them feel irritated? Like, do they have a need to get quickly through their day and you're like mucking things up? And so how would you understand and respond to that need? Or do they need to feel like the expert and now they feel irritated because you're making them realize they don't know very much about this policy? What's behind that feeling? Because once you get to that, then you can come back to them in a different way.
When I read this, I kind of automatically went back to the archetypes and try to put myself in that mind frame and trying to figure out, right or wrong, what type of archetype I'm dealing with currently, and kind of, went from there.
Derek, can you say more about that? Like, which archetype did you think you were working with, and then how did you go?
Yeah, no, just based on what archetype I thought I was dealing with, and I just kind of automatically thought of my approach and felt, okay, well, I need to dig in more into who this person is, because to me, the statement was actually more like a question. because they're telling you, okay, yeah, it's whatever local is, but at the same time, they're also asking you, in my mind, how this will help them back at home, how whatever issue you're trying to push will help them back at home so that they can go back and be okay with whatever decision, you know, they're making with you. In order for us to know that, then we have to know what their supporters are back at home and what they're looking for.
The comments in the, thank you, the comments in the chat from Alin, I hope I'm saying your name right, and Katie, like the idea that they're trying to find the bridge between local and state government, they have a need to bring those together, and maybe they have had some different experiences with that in the past, might be coming out in irritation or confusion or uncertainty.
One thing we talked about in the group was the fact that it seems like this person's trying to navigate their own feelings of wanting to be accepted or to like please, you know, trying to please everyone, and how difficult that is when you are an elected official, because you're navigating relationships that you have in various capacities. I think Christy brought up a great point, was like being able to ask some questions or to just even respond in an empathetic way, because it sounds like this person is really trying to do as much as they can to come at this situation, trying to like please everyone they're working with, basically, and just how difficult that really is.
So you might even say something as you're doing your like micro processing as they're talking, you might come back and say, oh, I hear how challenging it must be to try to satisfy everyone and try to marry local and state and try to, you know, can you tell me more about that? Or for this policy that we're talking about in particular, can you help me understand the tension points there? And like you all know this, you're advocates, you know how to keep a conversation going, but like any question you can ask before you dive in on your argument just gives you more insight and a little bit longer landing strip or takeoff strip, whichever one you're doing in the conversation.
I'll add to that. In our group, we started talking about, and this kind of feeds into this, but the idea that they are, they're asking a question, but it's almost like an opportunity to be a person who is there, is a knowledge partner with them. You know, guess whose phone rings? You know, they get maybe an angry call, and it's an opportunity potentially to give them information to be able to use in those calls with people. You know, Leslie made a great point about like, they're not necessarily having to answer to people, but they do have to, you know, talk with them. So what information can we share in partnership that can help them be informed and take those conversations on? And then, you know, build that relationship between the two of you together in that trust. And so I thought that was like an interesting path to come to, you know, that it's a space that's an opportunity from that quote to build a partnership. And Leslie, correct me, like chime in if I'm speaking incorrectly about it, but it was an interesting point where we could build partnership there.
One thought I've had as I'm listening to this and trying to connect to people's need or the feeling, you know, that drives their need, is this idea of nonverbal communication or body language, and just thinking how it was difficult to read that quote and understand need, because not everybody is a word person really, or, you know, uses words. And I was thinking about what you said earlier, Jennifer, about is there need to get through their day, for example, and can you be responsive to that in what you say back to them, and thought like how much body language tells us about whether someone needs to get through their day, for example. So I was just thinking about just this kind of holistic approach to responding to people. And sometimes you have all of the cues and sometimes you don't, if you're just responding in writing or in a quick hallway conversation or on the phone.
Yeah, such a good point. You could read this like, guess whose phone rings? So get out of here. I don't want to talk about this. Or guess whose phone rings? Please help me.
Help me. Right.
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 Jerry's got some interesting stuff going on in the chat that's mirroring what Logan was saying earlier about who calls and who doesn't call and who are they hearing from. And so like one thing you could say to this is, I'd actually love to know what happens when your phone rings. Like, who are you hearing from on this? What are the different perspectives? And to Serene's point, oh, I could help you answer that. Like, here's a great, if you want, here's some information you can use. It goes to the political cover thing too. And I don't know if you would call that out directly. It depends on the relationship with the person. But, you know, I hear that you want to do some things that you may need cover or support for. Here's some facts you can share. Here's somebody I can connect you with. So you're listening to that need, maybe for political cover. Okay, so I'm going to keep us going, but again, keep jumping in with questions in the chat or with a hand raise or just jumping in. There aren't so many of us that we can't just have conversation. So the next step in this exercise is a role play. And so we encourage you really to do this work in preparation for meetings, right? You can probably make a pretty good guess based on prior meetings or what you know about a person you're about to meet with, what kinds of things they might say to you. And so grab a partner, say, these are the things I think I'm going to hear. Help me think through, help me get ready, like get my feelings out there, how I'm going to feel so I can be ready. And then let me think about what they're feeling so that I could think about how to be translating in real time. And then you go into a role play. In a longer workshop, we would do role plays with each of you. But for today, we're going to offer you as an example, a video. And as you watch this and we think about it and discuss it together, imagine how it would feel to be supported in the way that you're about to see before a challenging meeting. Or like Petra in my group was saying, they often do this also as a debrief. What happened? What did I feel? What did that do? How did I respond? How do I learn for next time, right? So this role play exercise is something you can request from Voices for Healthy Kids TA. And you can also do it with your team. So Anasuya Starbear, I mentioned earlier, recorded this role play ahead of time with Julie Tom, a government relations director in West Virginia. And I meant to look earlier, Julie, to see if you're here. Are you here?
I don't think she is.
She's like, I don't want to watch myself on video. I'm not coming. But she's awesome. So send her some props for doing this exercise. Julie and Anasuya spent about an hour and a half together working through the exercise that we share in the guide. So they did the first two steps that you just went through. And then they did this role play. So we'll share some of the aha moments and highlights. But as a little bit of background, Anasuya started by asking Julie to name a situation that she's worked through something controversial or prickly with a decision maker. And Julie chose a time when she was working to protect boards of health decision-making power in consideration of a cigar bar licensing, which the decision maker was framing as a state economic development bill. So Julie's working on the local level from a local public health perspective. This decision maker is trying to preempt local decision making by saying this is a state economic development effort. So Anasuya asked Julie then to think about a moment in that conversation that really got to her, something that was hard for her to hear, and asked her to describe the feelings she experienced in her body and her emotions. And Anasuya asked us to remind you while you're watching this, that coming to an awareness about what your needs and values are, which is step one of this exercise, takes time and it can get sticky, but it's so important because it really informs step 2 and step 3 in the whole role play and grounds you in a place of knowing. So I want to take a second to watch this step. You might want to have your feelings and needs list handy so you can think about what you're hearing from Julie. And let me get this video teed up. Hang on one sec.
So Julie and I are going to recap what she came to about her own feelings, needs, and values when a policymaker she's working with said something that was difficult for her to hear. So Julie, do you want to just start with what he said and then what you connected with right now in terms of how you feel about that, why it was hard?
Sure. So during my conversation with the legislator, it was regarding a cigar bar bill. He actually mentioned that we are creating hoops for people to jump through and weren't supporting economic development in our state. And followed up by saying that smoking doesn't kill people. Eating McDonald's and getting fat is what kills people. So this was a really hard thing for me to hear because we had been focused on a lot of the healthcare aspects of this bill and supporting local level policymakers to be able to still maintain their current role to make these decisions. So my first feelings when I heard this were annoyed, disgusted, and afraid. I was annoyed because I couldn't believe that he actually said that. I felt disgusted because what he said was absolutely untrue, and it felt like more of a theatrical approach to the problem. And I was afraid because this person was a member of leadership. He's still well respected in the legislature, and I was concerned that he would be talking about this to other colleagues, laughing about the fact that he said these things, or encouraging these same talking points with other folks in the legislature.
Yeah, all big feelings and all natural in a moment like that, for sure, for all of us, I think. And we don't want to dwell on those feelings, but we can use them as information to get to our needs and our values. And finding overlapping needs and values is a way that we build bridges in difficult conversations. And so going with those feelings and asking yourself, what did you need in that moment when you were feeling that? What did you need in order to feel more grounded?
First, I needed understanding because I needed to be able to understand that he was coming from a place that was different from me. He's more focused on freedom and economic development, where I was more focused on the health and well-being of folks in our state. I needed hope. I came to this conversation hoping that we could find common ground and really move forward in a more productive way. And instead, when he talked, it seemed a lot more like he was just willing to die on his own hill and focus on only things that he cared about. And finally, a need that needed met was the purpose. I needed him to understand that there was purpose behind this because it is important to focus on these things. We need to make sure we're not only focusing on economic development, but creating a workforce and an environment in West Virginia that is healthy and not plagued by tobacco use.
And I think in there, I don't know if you said it, I think understanding, you were also needing some kind of.
Yeah, so understanding is another major piece to this. I really wanted to make sure he understood where I was coming from, and that we could find, and I could understand where he was coming from, so that we could hopefully work together to find a way to meet both of those needs.
Yeah, and then the needs point to the values, feelings point to the needs point to the values. So if you sit in all of that you just said, what is it that you really value that was feeling like it was on the line?
The respect to me, and particularly to me as an expert in this field, were two things that really stood out to me in this situation and the values that were affected. I was the person coming to him with a lot of experience in this, and I felt like he was not respecting that and didn't respect that I had information that really could have helped us find common ground and focus on things like the fact that he has kids. The resiliency was another value that was affected in this because we do a lot of work in tobacco work in West Virginia. It's continuous, and this was just another step, and it felt like I was coming back, having the same conversations, fighting the same fight. So that was something I certainly felt during this conversation. And finally, there was a nurturing component that I really wanted to make sure he understood, that this was beyond just the conversation with him. It was about other people in West Virginia, particularly our kids, to really help make a difference.
Yeah. So I'm just going to recap what you said about your feelings. You were annoyed, disgusted, and afraid. And you needed hope, understanding, and purpose. And your underlying values were respect, expertise, nurturing, and resiliency.
So let's break this down a little bit. Let's discuss it a bit. What are some of the things that you noticed and what came up for you while you're watching and listening?
For me, it was just her reaction of how offended she she felt at the moment. And I know that's something that at least when I have conversations, I do is take myself out of it. So that way, in these situations, I can be a little bit more objective in my listening, especially.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that happens a lot, is being able to put yourself in a position where you can hear and maybe even set aside how you're feeling so that you can focus on where those middle grounds are. And that's part of the process of the exercise role play, is that, you know, coming to this space of being able to identify the needs and the values and the core feelings. And again, the video is a recap of the work that they were doing in a larger session, right? And so they're really just sharing where they got to, not to the process of getting to it. And I think that that's important to note. And it was great that Julie shared that. She's like, I have a feeling and I have a need that I have expertise, and I feel that should be respected. And she didn't feel that. And she was able to, through the process of working through what she needed, was able to identify and say that out loud. What other questions are there? I know that, again, that there's a lot that comes through the steps. What else came up?
The thing that stood out to me was it seeming like the issue was being framed as a bilateral choice of either you're for like economic stuff or health. And I think that's kind of a false choice. So just curious if there was a way to, you know, both, or we can achieve both. And this is how, or at least make the connections about why the health stuff you're working on is important for the economy of the community.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point. And that kind of speaks to the process of finding those shared values so that you can then have that larger conversation about that this isn't an either or this could be a both and where can you identify where that comes together?
I think it's also important to, you were talking earlier, or Derek was talking earlier about taking himself out of the scenario, but also taking the other person and their personhood out of it and focusing squarely on the issue or the commonalities or what we're trying to get back to, what the question is, what the ask is, because too often we get tripped up, and we all do it, because we look at the personality, the delivery, and that's about what we're actually addressing today, is getting beyond getting stuck in that person and their personhood, and instead looking at, okay, this is a set of values, or this is a position that they hold, even if it's the way they deliver it is completely offensive. Let's stop, remove them from that. What was the issue? What was the original issue? And I think when you do that, you give yourself a position to work from rather than getting stuck in an offense.
I'm so intrigued by what you, where you're going with that. I totally hear it. And I'm also hearing Anasuya's voice in my head, because we worked with her so much through this, about just hanging on for a minute with the feelings and the needs that you're feeling and hearing from them before you jump to solution. So Christine did one of these exercises with Anasuya. And Christine, do you remember when Anasuya asked, how are you feeling? How might they be feeling? And you sort of went to like, well, I would then tell them this because of whatever. And Anasuya was like, you just jump to the solution. Stay in what are you feeling and what do they need? And I think, Alin, like, yes, you want to stay focused on the issue and not, I think what I don't want to put words in your mouth. What I'm hearing is don't think about them and the contested relationship that you might have with this person. But what I would encourage you to think about is, okay, what's the need and value that they are expressing in this, even about the issue or about the position they hold? And how can I, instead of just like immediately saying, well, you're making this a bilateral issue and here's why health is important to the economy, just to be for a minute like, boy, I hear that the economy is such an important value for you and your constituents. Tell me more about that. How do you see health fitting into that? right? Like leaning into that more.
I absolutely am right there. And the issue being, don't get so fixated on the delivery and or even the posture or the nonverbals that you can't stop and take that pause, and that you can't say, okay, what do you mean by that? Where are you coming from with that? And that pause typically isn't there. And I said in my group several times that for me, those pregnant pauses are very uncomfortable for most people. And to actually use that as the best tool that you have to be able to let it resonate and let it sit for a second. And for me, that removes that person from it, that person that I have cooked in my head, that image, that posture that I've now given and assigned that person. So yes, that's exactly what I was trying to say, and that it's extremely important to take that moment and remove those other pieces before you jump and launch in. Otherwise, it's going to go sideways.
Love it. And I love that pregnant pause. I was just thinking it's so funny when we do media training, we'll say, you know, what a reporter will ask you a question and then they'll just sit there because you feel uncomfortable. And then you say a bunch of stuff that you don't really need to be saying to the reporter. But the same thing happens here, right? Like you ask a question, you let it linger. They're probably going to talk because they don't want to sit there in silence. So yeah, use it strategically both ways. Jerry.
Yeah, I was just curious, and not, I think to the both comments of Derek and Aylin about like kind of taking ourselves out of it. Different thing that made me think about was the opposite of that, of like more personalizing it to build trust and a connection. And I think sometimes, like at the presidential State of the Union, you know, they have like someone in the balcony and they go to them and tell they're talking about the policy, but through a story of a person. And like, so I think there's like the times to depersonalize it, and maybe other times to make it more personal, to try to connect it back and try to see if, you know, taking it off from a policy conversation to a more personal one and maybe have a better impact on that decision maker.
And even hearing the stories they bring to this issue, they hear from their constituents. Yeah, just to make it more real in the community. Let me show you the second part of this video role play. I may stop it early, just depending on how we're doing on time, but where Julie and Anasuya went next was to practice step 2 together, which you did, which is guessing into the needs and values of the person she's talking to. And she starts off by talking about some ahas that she had about shared values. And then she and Anasuya model a quick role play. Now, remember, this is like a little snippet of their whole exercise. And so one interesting thing in the full session together, Anasuya paused their role play in the middle when Julie had tried something different and said how differently Anasuya felt in her body hearing Julie's translated reply to the elected official that Anasuya was playing. So she moved from like tense, like fight mode to a relaxed, like, oh, you're hearing me. You're actually taking the time to hear me, which really opened her up to conversation. So think about your own mental and physical state that comes up for you when you hear Julie's reply, and see if you experience something similar.
So we just completed step 2, which allowed me to take a look at how I thought the legislator felt and what his needs and values were when we had our conversation. A few of the real aha moments that I had when we were trying to determine this was seeing the crossover between my own needs and my own values and how they really correlated to his, and also seeing how we could maybe work together to create a new path. So 2 of the things we saw were acceptance and understanding that really overlapped in our needs. And then we had 2 sets of values that overlapped, including freedom and respect, and then expertise and values. So those are the things that I aim to try to include when I talk to this lawmaker after he makes the erroneous statement during our meeting.
And so I'm going to play him, and I'll make the statement that was hard for Julie to hear. And then she's going to use those overlapping values and needs as much as possible to try to build a bridge and see if they can work together on something. Okay, so you're just creating hoops for people to jump through. We want to create economic development. Smoking doesn't kill people.
I understand where you are coming from, and that is a place that absolutely values freedom, and I value freedom too. We are both experts here, so I'm hoping that we can come to a place of understanding and respect and move forward with freedom for all the people that we care about.
Well, what I don't understand is how we can have a joint strategy that gives us both freedom.
And that's the beginning of a real conversation.
Yes, and the more you practice role plays, the easier it gets to translate opposing strategies or criticism into shared needs and values and find that bridge. So if you focus on opposing strategies right away, it becomes harder to see how you might be able to work together on something you both truly feel good about. And in an actual role play, you're going to probably go back and forth a few times, and with a peer, you'll take turns playing yourself and playing the policymaker, so that when you're playing the policymaker, you can really feel into their experience and how those words land with them, and you can fine tune your strategy when you have the actual conversation.
So just sharing that process as a recap, Anasuya reminds us that in your old role play practice, to be sure to connect the values and the needs and the feeling words that you've identified in step 1 and 2 into the role play responses. So what did you notice in that process and in that exchange? Another note that Anasuya shared was that, that the whole point of the 3-step role play practice is to stay present and at your best, even if something is said that throws you off or upsets you. And so you stay out of reactivity by focusing on staying curious and finding that bridge. And you do that by identifying the compatible needs and values between yourself and the person you're speaking with, and then focusing the conversation from there. What came up for you in that exchange, if anything? Or how did you feel when Julie had that translated response? Aylin, she identified that's a starting point. Correct. Yeah, absolutely. And that's, like, as she said in the video, that's where you start the conversation, is just making that connection, being able to connect those dots and find those shared values. And so you can move forward in that. And the awareness shield comes into play with this as well. So thinking through again, at what point in the process, in that engagement, that feeds into that.
Yeah, Serena, I would just share that having done the exercise to myself that Jennifer indicated a few minutes ago, I think just taking the time to unpack a conversation and reframe it, because most of us, we're, like she said, kind of jumping to the conclusion or trying to find resolution quickly, because that's the pace in which we need to be moving. But taking the time to step back and realize that there may be more value going forward and more bridges to be built and success to be had if we take the time initially to look at things differently.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and so that's what we wanted to share with the 3-step exercise that you can find in the guide. And that's the process of starting a journey down non-polarizing communication techniques. There's a lot that can be explored there. And the guide also has additional resources if it's something that is interesting to you. So I'm going to pass it off to Joshua.
Thank you so much. Hopefully that was helpful to you all. I know that there are questions around, well, what are these needs and feelings and how do we use them? And I think that those videos and the role play was a perfect example of how you can use that to begin to make common connections and understand people that may be on the opposite end or opposing what may seem like opposite end from your perspective. We noted earlier that this work is about finding common ground with conservative decision makers. And it involves the fact that we are often engaging in discussion with others who are not yet ready to have overt conversations about equity and structural racism. We hope the content we share in this guide helps to move toward a space where this may become possible at some point. However, where the opportunity does exist to talk about these things, we ask you to use our racial equity and public policy guide to help you navigate those conversations. And the link to that guide has just been posted in the chat. And I want to pass it off to Ali to bring things home for us.
Thanks, Joshua, and thank you to the Metropolitan Group team and to all of you for joining us today. We hope that you can take what you've learned here to your team or coalition, and please reach out if you'd like support from our team. You can email us at voicesforhealthykids@heart.org with any questions or suggestions. You'll also see the link to the chat in the chat to request a TA session or inquire about joining a community of practice. You can request a TA session to go through the role play exercise together if you'd like. Please also fill out the short survey that we will email to you, or even better, I think we've posted it in the chat as well. It takes just a couple of minutes to fill out, so we hope that you can get to that today. We take your feedback seriously, and it really does help us get better with our future offerings. If you found this helpful, please encourage others to explore this resource. There are the modules and the online guide available. People can take what they need, just send them to our website. Thanks again to you all for attending, and again to the Metropolitan Group for hosting.